What if Hollywood buried some of its best war movies simply because they were too old, too serious, or too honest? Everyone talks about the big famous WWII classics, but some aviation films flew straight into history and vanished. These movies had burning skies, terrified pilots, damaged bombers, impossible missions, and scenes that still feel dangerous today. Number 18. The Lion Has Wings, 1939. Before World War II cinema became full of heroic pilots and explosive dogfights, Britain made The Lion Has Wings, a strange but fascinating film that feels like a warning siren turned into cinema. It was released right at the beginning of the war and works like a documentary-style propaganda film. Showing Britain as calm, ready, and protected by the Royal Air Force. The movie follows ordinary British life, then contrasts it with the threat of Nazi Germany, before moving into the power of the RAF and the idea that Britain's skies will not be taken easily. What makes it incredible today is not just the story, but the urgency. This is not a film looking back at history. This is a film made while history was about to explode. The famous scene is the air raid sequence, where British pilots rise into the sky and the film turns from calm explanation into pure wartime alarm. In the movie, this is happening as Britain is being told that the enemy may come, but the country is not helpless. The planes are not just machines here.
Aircraft, your routes and forecasts. Get your maps marked.
They are symbols of survival. It may feel stiff in places, but that stiffness is part of its power. It is a time capsule from a nation trying to look brave before the bombs arrived. Number 17. Target for Tonight, 1941. Target for Tonight is one of those forgotten aviation films that does not behave like a normal movie. It feels like you are being quietly pushed into the cockpit of a Wellington bomber and told, "Do not panic, just watch." Made by Britain's Crown Film Unit, the film follows the crew of a bomber called F for Freddy as they prepare for a raid over Germany. It was presented almost like a real mission, using RAF personnel and a documentary style, even though parts were clearly staged for cinema.
Back, sir. Several other aircraft have bombed the target. Oh, good.
What is the movie about? It is about routine under terror. The men attend the briefing, study the target, suit up, climb into the aircraft, take off into darkness, cross enemy territory, drop their bombs, and then try to get home. The famous scene comes near the end, when the bomber is hit by flak and begins struggling back through fog. In the movie, this is happening after the mission should already feel finished, which makes it worse. The danger is not only over the target, the danger follows them home. The damaged aircraft searches for its base like a wounded animal trying to find shelter. That is why the film still works. It does not glamorize the raid. It shows war as procedure, pressure, and one long breath held in the dark. Number 16. A Yank in the RAF, 1941. A Yank in the RAF may look like a glossy star vehicle at first, but underneath the romance and studio shine, it captures a powerful idea. Before America officially entered the war, some American pilots were already being pulled toward Britain's fight. The film stars Tyrone Power as Tim Baker, an American pilot who joins the Royal Air Force during the period when the United States was still neutral. Betty Grable co-stars, giving the movie a lighter romantic side, but the aviation material gives it real wartime energy. The movie is about a man who begins as careless and self-interested, then slowly understands the seriousness of the war around him. In the movie, this is happening while Britain is under pressure. RAF pilots are risking their lives, and Baker is forced to grow up fast. The famous scene is the Dunkirk sequence, where the film stops feeling like a romantic adventure and turns into a full war picture. Aircraft roar overhead, men are trapped, and the hero has to decide whether courage is something he only talks about or something he can actually live with.
State fair, he was skywriting. All of a sudden, the motor fell out of his plane. People screamed.
The film may not be as respected today as darker WWII classics, but it has that early war Hollywood electricity. It is patriotic, dramatic, sometimes sentimental, but still exciting because it shows an American hero entering the fire before history officially gave him permission. Number 15, International Squadron, 1941. International Squadron is another early WWII aviation film about Americans flying for the RAF before the United States joined the war. This one stars Ronald Reagan as Jimmy Grant, a reckless airshow pilot who is asked to join an RAF squadron made up of American volunteers. At first, he refuses because he wants safety, comfort, and his old life. But when he reaches England and sees the cost of the war with his own eyes, the movie shifts from light adventure into sacrifice. The film is about selfishness being burned away by battle. In the movie, this is happening as Jimmy moves from a show-off flyer to a man who finally understands discipline and duty. The most memorable scene comes during the London air raid, when Jimmy sees civilians suffering and realizes this war is not some faraway headline. It is landing on streets, homes, and children. Later, the aerial combat scenes turn his arrogance into tragedy. He is a good pilot, but being good is not enough if you cannot think beyond yourself. The final mission has that classic Warner Brothers wartime punch: loud engines, fast choices, and no easy rescue. Today, the film feels forgotten because it belongs to a pre-Pearl Harbor moment, but that is exactly what makes it interesting. It shows Hollywood trying to push America emotionally into the war before politics fully caught up. Number 14, Captains of the Clouds, 1942. Captains of the Clouds is a colorful, emotional aviation film starring James Cagney, and it deserves more attention than it gets today. The story follows Canadian bush pilots whose rough flying skills make them legends in the wilderness. But when World War II grows larger, these independent men join the Royal Canadian Air Force and discover that military flying is not the same as showing off over lakes and forests. It was also notable as a major Hollywood production filmed in Canada. What is the movie about? It is about wild men learning that courage needs discipline. Cagney plays the kind of cocky pilot who thinks instinct can beat every rule, but the war proves him wrong. In the movie, this is happening as civilian flyers are turned into part of a massive air training machine for the Allied war effort. The famous scene is the final ferry mission, where unarmed aircraft are flown toward Britain and suddenly face enemy attack. The moment becomes brutal because these are not glamorous fighters. They are vulnerable machines being pushed through dangerous skies. The sacrifice at the end gives the film its lasting sting. It starts almost like a flying adventure, with big personalities and bright Technicolor skies. But by the finish, it becomes a story about men who finally understand that the sky is not a playground anymore. It is a battlefield. Number 13, Flying Tigers, 1942. Flying Tigers gives John Wayne one of his early major war film roles, and while it is not always historically perfect, it has the raw appeal of a wartime action picture, made while the conflict was still raging. The film dramatizes the American volunteer group, the famous Flying Tigers, American pilots fighting Japanese forces in China during World War II. Wayne plays Jim Gordon, the tough squadron leader trying to hold together a group of pilots who are brave, difficult, and sometimes dangerously selfish. The movie is about air combat, loyalty, and the cost of treating war like personal glory. In the movie, this is happening at a Chinese base, where the pilots must protect supply routes and fight off enemy attacks with limited resources. The famous scene is the climactic mission, where personal rivalry gives way to sacrifice. The aerial scenes are fast, smoky, and very much of their time, but they still carry energy because the film understands one thing clearly: a fighter squadron is only as strong as the men who trust each other. Wayne's character is not just leading planes, he is trying to control egos in a war zone. That makes the drama simple but effective. Today, Flying Tigers is often overshadowed by later, bigger WWII Aviation movies, but it remains a punchy, patriotic combat film with real old Hollywood force. Number 12. The First of the Few, 1942. The First of the Few, released in America as Spitfire, is not just a war movie. It is a tribute to the man behind one of the most iconic aircraft in history, R.J. Mitchell, the designer of the Supermarine Spitfire. Leslie Howard directed, produced, and starred in the film, with David Niven co-starring as a test pilot figure connected to Mitchell's work. The film frames the Spitfire not simply as a machine, but as the result of obsession, illness, pressure, and national need. The movie is about creation before combat. In the movie, this is happening as Britain faces the future threat of air war, while Mitchell pushes himself to design something faster, cleaner, and stronger than anything before it. The famous scene comes near the end, when the Spitfire's meaning becomes clear during the Battle of Britain. The aircraft rises into the sky, and the film turns engineering into emotion. We are not just watching pilots fight. We are watching years of work become the difference between invasion and survival. The film is old-fashioned, yes, but that old-fashioned sincerity is powerful. It treats design like heroism. It says that wars are not only won by soldiers in the moment, but also by people who build the tools years earlier. For aviation fans, this one is still essential. Number 11. One of Our Aircraft is Missing, 1942. Powell and Pressburger's One of Our Aircraft is Missing is one of the smartest wartime aviation films because it does not stay in the air the whole time. It begins with a British bomber crew forced down after a raid, but the real story becomes their escape through occupied Holland. The film was nominated for Academy Awards, including recognition for its original screenplay and special effects, which shows how strong its craft was even during wartime production. The movie is about survival after the mission goes wrong. In the movie, this is happening when the bomber crew must depend on Dutch civilians, resistance helpers, and their own calm under pressure. The famous scene is the sudden realization that the aircraft is missing and the men are no longer heroes in the sky, but hunted strangers on the ground. That twist makes the film different. Most aviation movies focus on takeoff, battle, and landing. This one asks what happens when there is no safe landing. The crew has to move quietly through windmills, villages, and enemy danger, trusting people who could be killed for helping them. It is suspenseful, without needing constant explosions. The aviation scenes pull you in, but the human network beneath the war keeps you watching. It is forgotten by casual audiences, but for classic British cinema fans, it remains a gem. Number 10. Air Force, 1943. Howard Hawks' Air Force is a tough, muscular WWII aviation film, centered on a B-17 bomber called the Mary Ann. The story follows the crew as they fly across the Pacific and arrive near Pearl Harbor during the Japanese attack, pushing them straight into America's entry into the war. The film stars John Garfield, John Ridgely, Gig Young, Arthur Kennedy, and Harry Carey, and it was made with the kind of group male tension Hawks handled so well. The movie is about a crew becoming a fighting unit under impossible pressure. In the movie, this is happening as the men begin, almost like workers doing a hard job, then find themselves caught inside history. The famous scene is the arrival at Pearl Harbor, where confusion turns into shock as the attack unfolds around them. The Mary Ann is not just an aircraft here. It becomes a battered home, a workplace, and a weapon. Every man inside has a role, and every role suddenly matters. Some wartime attitudes in the film have aged badly, but the filmmaking still has force. Hawks gives the bomber weight. You feel the metal, the engines, the cramped spaces, and the fear of being far from safety. It is not as commonly discussed as later bomber classics, but its energy is still incredible. Number 9. A Guy Named Joe, 1943. A Guy Named Joe is one of the strangest and most emotional WWII aviation movies, because it mixes combat flying with supernatural romance. Directed by Victor Fleming, the film stars Spencer Tracy as Pete Sandage, a reckless pilot, Irene Dunne as Dorinda Durston, and Van Johnson as Ted Randall. The story follows Pete after his death, as he becomes a kind of unseen guide for a younger pilot, while the woman he loved tries to keep living. It later inspired Steven Spielberg's Always, which moved the idea from wartime pilots to aerial firefighters. The movie is about letting go. In the movie, this is happening during World War II, where flying is dangerous enough already, but love makes every mission heavier. The famous scene is not just an aerial attack. It is Dorinda taking control of a dangerous mission while Pete's spirit guides her. That moment is wild, emotional, and very old Hollywood. A woman who has lost the man she loves enters the danger herself, and the dead pilot must accept that he cannot control life anymore. The aviation scenes give the movie excitement, but the real engine is grief. It asks a painful question. Can a hero still be heroic if his final act is stepping aside? For a war film, that is surprisingly tender. It is sentimental, but it earns its tears. Number 8. 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, 1944. 30 Seconds Over Tokyo remains one of the strongest films about the Doolittle raid, yet many modern viewers barely talk about it. Based on Captain Ted W. Lawson's book, the film stars Van Johnson as Lawson, with Spencer Tracy appearing as Jimmy Doolittle. It follows the training, launch, bombing mission, and dangerous aftermath of America's first retaliatory airstrike against Japan after Pearl Harbor. The movie is about ordinary men being asked to do something that sounds almost impossible. Launch land-based B-25 bombers from an aircraft carrier, strike Japan, and then try to reach China. In the movie, this is happening while the crews know the mission is secret, risky, and likely to leave them with no easy way home. The famous scene is the carrier takeoff. The runway looks too short, the ocean waits at the edge, and every plane feels like it is daring gravity to blink first. Later, the crash landing of Lawson's plane, the ruptured duck, gives the film its harshest emotional punch. This is not just about bombing Tokyo for morale. It is about what the men pay after the headlines are written. The film is long, sincere, and sometimes quiet, but that patience makes the mission feel real. It is not just action, it is endurance. Number 7. God is My Co-Pilot, 1945. God is My Co-Pilot returns to the Flying Tigers story, but this time through the real-life figure Robert Lee Scott Jr. Based on his autobiography, the film stars Dennis Morgan as Scott and follows his service with the Flying Tigers and the United States Army Air Forces in China and Burma during World War II. It is a Warner Brothers war picture full of speed, danger, and dramatic patriotism. The movie is about a pilot who desperately wants to get into the fight and finally finds his place in the skies over Asia. In the movie, this is happening as American and Allied pilots face Japanese aircraft in a theater of war that Hollywood often ignored compared to Europe. The famous scene is Scott taking on enemy fighters in his P-40, with the shark-mouth aircraft turning the sky into a deadly arena. The film's production also has a dark history. Several airmen died in a mid-air collision during filming, which gives the finished aerial material a tragic shadow. That real danger behind the camera makes the flying scenes feel heavier today. The film may be loud and patriotic, but it also captures the lonely hunger of a pilot who believes the sky is where his purpose lives. It is not subtle, but it is gripping. Number 6. The Way to the Stars, 1945. The Way to the Stars is one of the most quietly devastating WWII aviation films ever made. Instead of focusing only on battles, it focuses on an airfield in Britain and the people who pass through it. Directed by Anthony Asquith and written with Terence Rattigan, the film stars Michael Redgrave, John Mills, Rosamund John, and Douglas Montgomery. It tells the story of British and American flyers, ground crews, and civilians living beside constant loss. The movie is about the emotional cost of an air war. In the movie, this is happening at a base where men arrive, joke, fall in love, take off, and sometimes never come back. The famous scene is not a giant explosion. It is the repeated emptiness after aircraft fail to return. The film understands that an empty chair can hurt more than a battle scene, When the American flyers enter the story, the movie also becomes about culture clash, friendship, and shared sacrifice. Its power is in restraint. Nobody screams at the audience to feel sad. The sadness is already in the routine. Planes leave, people wait. Bad news arrives politely. That is why it still feels incredible today. It shows aviation war not as a non-stop adventure, but as a place where ordinary kindness survives beside constant death. Number 5. Fighter Squadron, 1948. The Fighter Squadron is a post-war WWII Aviation film directed by Raoul Walsh, starring Edmund O'Brien and Robert Stack. It takes place at an American fighter base in England in 1943 and focuses on P-47 Thunderbolt pilots, command pressure, rule-breaking, and the hard shift from being a reckless ace to being responsible for other men. The production used real P-47 aircraft, and its color aerial material still makes it stand out. The movie is about the painful difference between courage and leadership. In the movie, this is happening when Major Ed Harden, a Maverick pilot, suddenly has to enforce rules he used to ignore.
Pardon me.
That irony gives the drama its bite. The famous scene is the large-scale fighter action, where the Thunderbolts roar through the sky with a weight and presence modern CGI often struggles to match. These planes look heavy because they are heavy. They do not float like cartoons. They punch through the air. What makes the film memorable is that it understands fighter pilots are not just romantic daredevils.
Successful in furthering your own ideas. First, the dropping of the belly tanks, and now
They are men trapped between instinct and orders. One wrong choice can get a friend killed. The film has some familiar wartime character types, but Walsh keeps it moving with masculine tension and strong aerial spectacle. For aviation fans, the aircraft footage alone makes it worth rediscovering. Number 4. Appointment in London, 1953. Appointment in London, released in the United States as Raiders in the Sky, is one of the most underrated RAF Bomber Command films. It stars Dirk Bogarde as Wing Commander Tim Mason, a Lancaster bomber commander in 1943, who is close to completing his third tour of operations.
Cut the engine!
The story was based on material by John Wooldridge, himself a former RAF bomber pilot, who flew more than 100 operational sorties. The movie is about exhaustion wearing a uniform. In the movie, this is happening inside a bomber command squadron, where every raid may be the one that does not come back. Mason wants to finish a round number of missions, but command pressure, mounting losses, and human fear
You cold back there?
make that desire feel almost dangerous. The famous scene is the climactic Lancaster raid, where the film finally lets the bombers fill the night sky and shows the terror of men flying into darkness with no promise of return. What makes it powerful is the mood. This is not a simple, brave boys go bombing story. It is about stress, superstition, guilt,
Right, Mac, I don't think you got him.
Is that right?
Good morning, sir.
Morning, guys.
and command responsibility. Bogarde gives Mason a controlled surface, but underneath you feel a man being slowly crushed by duty. The film is not as famous as The Dam Busters, but in some ways, it feels more intimate and more haunted. Number 3. Angels 1-5, 1952. Angels 1-5 is a Battle of Britain film that deserves to be mentioned far more often. Directed by George Morrow Farrell, it stars Jack Hawkins,
Jerry to sneak in and plaster everything while our backs are turned.
Speaking for myself, I'm glad I wasn't
Michael Dennison, Dulcie Gray, and John Gregson. The story centers on a young pilot joining an RAF fighter squadron during the Battle of Britain, and its title comes from RAF radio language meaning 15,000 feet. It was also the first British post-war production to deal with the Battle of Britain. The movie is about learning fast,
Hello, Pimpernel Leader, Sapper calling. Make angels as quickly as you can.
because the war will not wait. In the movie, this is happening as pilot officer Septic Baird arrives, with confidence, makes mistakes, and faces the brutal rhythm of squadron life. The famous scene is his messy arrival, when he brings in a replacement Hurricane and immediately crashes after avoiding another damaged aircraft. It is almost comic, but it tells us everything. In this world, even landing can be dangerous. Later, the operations room scenes give the film a tense heartbeat, with officers tracking aircraft while young men fight above them. Unlike bigger war epics, Angels 1-5 feels grounded.
Use of what we've got. The MO says the bear will be fit for operations in a couple of days.
It cares about procedures, fatigue, weather, wounded pride, and the fragile confidence of pilots who must climb back into the cockpit after fear has already found them. It is not flashy, but it is honest, and that honesty is why it still holds up. Number 2. Malta Story, 1953. Malta Story is a WWII Aviation film with a setting that automatically creates tension. The Siege of Malta. Directed by Brian Desmond Hurst, the film stars Alec Guinness as Peter Ross, an RAF photo reconnaissance pilot stranded on the island, with Jack Hawkins, Anthony Steele, Muriel Pavlo, and Flora Robson also in the cast. The story combines aerial reconnaissance, the defense of Malta, and a tragic romance during one of the war's most pressured Mediterranean campaigns. The movie is about survival on an island being slowly strangled by war. In the movie, this is happening while Malta is under constant air attack and Allied supply lines are in danger. Peter's job is not to shoot down enemy planes in heroic dogfights. His job is to fly high, take photographs, and bring back information that may save the island. The famous scene is the discovery of enemy invasion preparations through aerial reconnaissance. It turns a camera into a weapon. The tension comes from knowing that one photograph can change everything, but only if the pilot survives long enough to bring it home. The film also uses real Malta locations and wartime footage, giving it a texture that studio-bound war films often lack. It is romantic, tragic, and tense, but its greatest strength is showing that aviation is not always about attack. Sometimes the most dangerous mission is simply seeing the truth. Number 1. The Purple Plane, 1954. At number 1 is The Purple Plane, a WWII aviation drama that feels more psychologically modern than many louder war films. Directed by Robert Parrish, it stars Gregory Peck as Bill Forrester, a Royal Canadian Air Force pilot serving with the RAF in Burma near the end of the war. Forrester is a damaged man, grieving the loss of his wife in a bombing raid in London.
For a couple hours yet. Might lose my bearings.
And his pain has turned him reckless in the cockpit. The movie is about a pilot who no longer fears death, which makes him dangerous to everyone around him. In the movie, this is happening in the Burma campaign, where heat, isolation, aircraft missions, and emotional trauma press down on him. The famous scene comes after Forrester's aircraft crashes in the wilderness, forcing him and others to survive on the ground. Suddenly, the man who seemed ready to die has to fight to live.
That's where I get out.
Not too much talk, please.
That reversal gives the film its power. The aviation scenes matter, but the real battle is inside the pilot. Gregory Peck plays him with quiet damage, not big speeches. The Burmese landscape gives the movie a strange, dreamlike atmosphere, far from the familiar skies over Europe. That is why The Purple Plane feels so special today. It is not just a forgotten WWII aviation movie. It is a story about grief, survival, and the terrifying moment when a man discovers he may still want to live.
Any reliance at all on his judgment about anything.
He got us down all right.
These forgotten WWII aviation movies prove that the best war films were not always the loudest or most famous. Some were hidden in smoke, fog, old film reels, and half-remembered names. But their pilots, bombers, raids, crashes, and sacrifices still hit hard today. So tell us, which of these Sky War classics deserves a serious comeback?